very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mongu Shampagi, and tonight we'll be discussing the war of attrition. Is it a war of attrition or a realignment within the national resistance movement as new NRM young turks emerge to challenge historicals? To discuss that with us, let me start with one of the surviving NRM ideologues, because they say NRM doesn't have many ideologues at the moment. Mzee Kajabagu Karsoke, you're most welcome to the Fourth Estate. We also have Onapito Ekomoloit. He's been in the NRM, now he's in the private sector. Corporate Affairs Director of Nile Breweries, SAB Miller. He's worked with the president and done everything in the media, including reporting, editing, teaching, and owning a media house. Moses Kisa is a political analyst and a researcher. He also writes frequently in the media. And former, actually, you're still a journalist, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm a columnist for The Observer.
A columnist for The Observer.
Right.
And Chris Obore. Chris, very nice to have you.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to start from this side and come to end with Mr. Kajabago. Chris, we've been watching all this contest between NRM young turks and the elderly, which forced the other day one of the historicals, Uganda's ambassador to Burundi, Major General Masaya Chaligonza, complaining and saying Mbabazi now has a right to stand, because some people say he's saying this because he feels a lot of pressure from Odrek Rwabogo, a son-in-law to the president. And this realignment, there is a concern in the NRM because Muhammad Nsereko, one of the rebel MPs, is negotiating with the rest of his group, with President Yoweri Museveni, the chairman of the NRM, and they were allowed the other day to pick nomination forms and run. So Francis Babu, who is a member of the Central Executive Committee, is complaining, why do you allow these boys to come back? Hakim Lukenge, served in the State House, is challenging for the position of National Vice Chairman of the National Resistance Movement against Mzee Chigongo. In Eastern Uganda, Mike Mukula is facing a challenge from Moses Warieko. So everybody is on tenterhooks. Is this a realignment? Will the young turks upset the apple cart, as they say?
Apart from Chigonga and Mukula, the rest who have been challenged have come out openly expressing their displeasure. That also tells you their level of conviction about their own NRM ideology. And this is not to mean that the young turks are either right or wrong. The point here is that the young turks are many. And it's not only these people you are mentioning. The attack on the young turks began with Professor Bukenya. When he was being asked to appear in the committee, he began despising the secretariat, because the secretariat is composed of young people. He said, I can't appear to those young people, that young girl. So you can see bad manners on the part of the NRM big older group, that you don't expect to be, you are saying you're growing a party, you're growing an ideology. But the people whom you're having an ideology, you are showing outright disrespect for them. I find that challenging in terms of the commitment, first of all, to their own ideals, which later Mzee Karsoke will tell us. So I find a departure that maybe even people who call NRM ideologues are not ideologues. They are also taking shelter in NRM. And they feel threatened that the new people are coming in. That's why I find a problem. The other way I'm looking at it is there is absolutely nothing for the young people to aspire to be leaders. Ideologically, there's nothing wrong with that. And they command the numbers. And in any case, they should be heading the transition from the old to the next generation.
Is the old generation, Moses, is the old generation keen?
Let me conclude this thought, yes, Charles, because I was building a thought. Ideally, they're supposed to hand over to that generation. What we are discussing, it has become so apparent because of the name Odrek Rwabogo. That's where the contention has come in. Which to me, again, ideally, nothing wrong with Odrek aspiring to be a leader.
True.
Maybe what the NRM people are seeing in this candidature is perhaps it is lack of strategic and the tactical acceptance. That's where the problem comes in. But we do not know what are the forces actually driving Odrek to come and stand before we even judge him. But already those who believe that there is a challenge, the environment are currently is so polluted that anything to do with Odrek standing remove something from the party chairman. That is the reason. But we don't know from Odrek, other than the ideology is talking about, what are because politics is not about what people profess. It's what they discuss outside the media, the public realm. So why is Odrek coming? I think he's entitled to stand, but at the same time, strategically and tactically, Odrek needs to rethink. But it doesn't make this old man Chaligonza better. Is Chaligonza saying that NRM positions have been gazetted for each and every person?
Ring-fenced.
Ring-fenced, that it is him to be there.
Or maybe he wants to.
And why is Chaligonza shouting because Odrek is there and not because Otafire is there? What if Odrek fails and Otafire wins? So what would Chaligonza say? Would he come back supporting Museveni? Or we will go ahead and... So I think it's politics of blackmail.
Moses, if you'll indulge me, let's jump to... Because he raises a few fundamental issues about the generational divide.
Yep.
And I want to bring in Mzee Kajabago. Okay. Is it an ideological departure? You, the founders of the movement, were supposed to pass it on to the young people. But now all of you want those positions ring-fenced. Or your colleagues, at least you're not in elective politics. But your colleagues want ring-fencing. You start with the sole candidature for the president. Now, because the president has... The party chairman, sorry. The party chairman has a sole candidature. Matai Chaligonza wants his position also ring-fenced. Francis Babu wants his position ring-fenced. Moses Chigongo hasn't spoken out yet.
See, I would say that what is important is philosophy. You are either a philosopher or a gossiper or a backbiter. What is important is philosophy. All these presidential candidates in Uganda, first and foremost, should be philosophers.
Kings.
Are they philosophers? Do they understand philosophy? It's not a matter of claiming that you want to be a presidential candidate. Are you a presidential candidate as a philosopher?
No, we are not yet talking presidential candidates. We are talking about the struggle within the NRM, because Matai Chaligonza doesn't want to be a presidential candidate. He wants to be vice chairman, Western Uganda, in the NRM, which allows him access to the, which gives him a seat in the Central Executive Committee. And he's being challenged by Odrek Wawogo.
Is he a philosopher? Is Wawogo a philosopher? You see, what you have here, the problem you have, is a struggle for positions. It is positionism, which is not a correct line in philosophy. Very inferior. You should talk philosopher. I want to be a member of parliament. Why? What do you want to do? Do you understand the concept of a parliament as a component of a state apparatus? Do you understand a state apparatus? Can you define a state apparatus? And when you want to be its member, do you understand what you want to do within the state apparatus as a member of the same apparatus? Do you know it? That's the problem we have. People want to be what they want to be without telling us why they want to be what they want to be. You see, they are mentally stunted, mentally staggering, spiritually dehydrated, fighting for chairs, not for what they should do for the country. That's the problem you have. Your problem is the level of education.
And that problem
all
is...
these cadres who are standing are not properly educated. That's what I'm saying.
And that's the problem within the party you support, the National Resistance Movement.
Of course. You can see that somebody says, I have been in the party for a long time, I'm a veteran soldier, I should be the one. Wawogo comes, he doesn't tell us why he wants to be a candidate. Chaligonza tells us I want to continue, he doesn't tell us why, how he's better than Wawogo. Wawogo doesn't tell us how he's better than Chaligonza. That's the level of education they have in your party, which is in power. The problem now is, how do you raise cadres to become proper cadres to run a state? And can each one of them or either of them define what a state is, what law is, and how they can use them to run society, which is different from mere community? Are you with me?
We are with you, I believe, and our viewers, and our viewers, I believe, are with you.
We are with you.
But I want to ask you a question. You are a strugglist, now you teach ideology. You have gone even a step further as the movement to establish a department that teaches patriotism, allocated it money. Isn't it a failure on your part as the elders of the party and of this so-called ideology that you have failed to pass it on and build a culture where the ideology grows?
You see, when you talk about patriotism, you should also talk about matriotism, because Pat is father, Mat is mother. There you are being sectarian, segregating women. So you should come for patriotism together with matriotism, so that we organize those who love their motherland and those who love their fatherland. But then both patriotism and matriotism can't be realized unless there is an economic system specifically stated which can be used as an epicenter for loving that country, for their motherland and their motherland. There can never be such a thing as spiritual life or patriotism or matriotism outside a specific economic system which can allow that thing to be realized. Otherwise, you are a fulminating demagogue.
That one.
Fulminating demagogue. Mr. Karsoke, let's go back. Don't get us lost in philosophy. I would implore you, don't get us lost in philosophy.
And terminology.
Speak to the party and terminology, yes. Getting us lost in semantics. You are an ideologue for the NRM. You train people at Chankwanzi, the National Leadership Institute in Chankwanzi. You are faced with a situation in the party where young members of the party, old members of the party, to use your own words, are not grounded in philosophy, are not grounded in ideology, are mentally stunted. And you have had 30 years of leadership to be able to build these things. Is it a failure on your part and your leadership?
As far as I'm concerned, I have been teaching exactly what I was told to teach. For example, I am under Lieutenant Colonel Masco, who is the head of the Directorate of Patriotism, and on Wednesday I'll be in Jinja to teach the same. He has sent me to many other capitals of districts to teach the same. I've done it, and I've said the same. If you don't have a correct economic system which can be used as an epicenter for what you want, or to be allowed to reflect what you want, then you are not doing the correct thing.
Does the NRM have that economic system to use as the epicenter?
It doesn't, because you see, patriotism can't be applied under slave-owning society. Uganda does not have slave-owning society. It can't be applied under feudalism, but Uganda is having elements of feudalism within its own land system. That's wrong. Then you are supporting private enterprise, which must be guided in ethics in order to ally itself correctly with what you call patriotism or matriotism. If you don't, if you allow the private enterprise system to dominate society, to dominate the economic base, and to influence the superstructure, patriotism will be seen as a square peg in a round hole.
So that is the NRM, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is it.
That is it. Moses, let me come back to you.
I'm very academic. I'm not against anybody. I talk in terms of systems and what is reality.
Okay. Moses, let me come back to you on this.
Yes,
when you see this contestation and you hear someone who's speaking from an academic, philosophical grounding, and you look at what's happening in the NRM, all this rush to pick nomination forms, to get nominated, everybody's contesting. But especially the fights between those who feel they are more entitled than those who are coming in. You find that in Maokota with Amelia Shambadi.
She was castigating Tango Doi.
Yes.
Yeah.
You find it with Matai Chaligonza and Odrek Rwabogo.
Right.
You find it with Francis Babu and Muhammad Itereko.
Yeah.
And there are those others that are latent.
Sure.
They haven't exploded yet. What does it say about the NRM of the party?
Well, Mzee Karusoke was sort of diverting us and taking us away from the crux of the subject we should be discussing, which is the crisis in NRM right now, pitting on the one hand the so-called old guard versus the young Turks. Ideally and ordinarily, competition should be welcome, and there shouldn't be any problem with young people like Odrek Rwabogo coming up to contest for office in the party. But if Chaligonza and others are protesting the emergence of the young Turks, what are they trying to say? What is at stake? The point they're making is that the NRM is an undemocratic organization where free competition is not possible. Because if free and fair competition were possible, then nobody should be complaining. Matai Chaligonza should feel free to compete against Odrek Rwabogo, have a fair shout at retaining his position, the same way that Odrek will be competing freely and fairly to unseat him. So if there's that rambling, on the one hand, the old guard feeling that the young folks are coming against them, then what they are saying is that the young people, especially Odrek Rwabogo, is going to use an unfair means to win that position. Now, if I may just say a little more about the Odrek factor, I think it complicates matters because, you see, Odrek Rwabogo ordinarily should have the right, as any other Ugandan, to stand for any office in the land. But if you are the son-in-law to the president and you want to be the vice chairman to the president, you are creating...
To the party chairman.
Yeah, to the party chairman, yes. He wants to be the vice to the party chairman. Charles, a father-in-law, I'm a married person, I have in-laws. Your father-in-law, the relationship that you have with your father-in-law is a very delicate relationship. I'm asking myself, how is Odrek Rwabogo going to be the vice to his father-in-law?
Let's take a break.
And how will they relate at that level?
Let's take a break. We'll discuss that after a short break, and I'll start with Honor Peter Ekomoloit when we come out of the break. You're still watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing, is it a realignment within the national resistance movement as young Turks emerge to challenge historicals? Honor, you've served with both the historicals and the young Turks within the NRM.
Yeah.
Will this actually cause a realignment in the party? Because there is a chance that Odrek Rwabogo says he has been mobilizing. I've been hearing WhatsApp clips of him mobilizing in different parts of the country. Hakim Lukenge is busy trying to mobilize for his own support. Moses Balieko has been setting ground for himself, and the others, and there are very many. The field is rich with contenders.
Well, Charles, I've lately been actually, whenever I watch mostly NTV news and I see Brigadier Chaligonza talking, I really laugh my lungs out, because not long ago he was one of those who was saying Amama.
Yeah.
Was kind of the usual jumping the queue, indiscipline and all of you.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that within a short time things have turned around for him.
Yeah.
And once more it underscores the failure of a lot of political actors to really understand their leader, President Museveni. Each time the writing on the wall is very clear. The president has been transitioning, except maybe himself. But let's take, for example, the army. He has been able to change the army from the NRA, the Bush army, into a new army with the new players who really matter.
So the young Turks have actually taken over.
Yeah, I think
in the military.
The same is happening in the NRM, or the political wing of the Bush movement, and nothing will stop it. And the president actually, fortunately, is quite good at this game. So he's busy cleaning out the whatever you call the historicals, whatever they, and most of them each time get surprised. Mama's got surprised. Now Chaligonza is surprised. But I mean, this,
but this is
and I think also
that presupposes, if I
think it tells us a lot about post 2016. I think maybe really we are headed for a transition in one way or the other. I think after 2016,
there's going to be, I believe there should be a serious change in the kind of players who are going to come to the fore. For you to see a person like Odrek, who is normally a very reserved person and I believe quite calculative, making such a move, there must be a lot.
Finish your point,
Yeah.
I'll come to Chris.
Sure. You see, Charles, the whole problem with this debate is that it wants to exempt the one position that is the most important, and that is the topmost position. So Odrek Rwabogo says that the old guard have done their bit, they are tired, they should give way. But then he says, for the president, he's
for
still
the party chairman.
For the party chairman, who is also the president. In fact, what makes us talk about him this much is because he's president, not because he's necessarily NRM party chairman. So Rwabogo does not want us to say that the topmost position has also been occupied by one person for such a long time. There is need for change. Okay, that one is ring-fenced permanently. Then you see that unprincipled way of looking at things. You see a bit of disingenuousness and dishonesty. And I'm glad that Onam also mentioned the issue of Matayo Chaligonza and his unprincipled stance. You see, when Amama Mbabazi was being pressed on the wall in SEC, Matayo Chaligonza was among those who were trying to hang him. Now that the tables have been turned against him in the form of Odrek Rwabogo coming for his position, suddenly Matayo Chaligonza sees a problem. This is a very, very big problem with our politicians, not being consistent and principled and standing for a certain position and saying, look, if we're talking about free and fair competition, let it apply across the board. You can't only think that it is bad when it is you, Matayo Chaligonza, and when it is Amama Mbabazi trying to stand against Museveni, you say he's being indisciplined. So I think that the NRM is caught up in a very big contradiction. Museveni wants to replace everybody else other than himself. As Onam was saying, he has done that in the army, except himself is still, the commander-in-chief, and is still in charge of directing most of the important activities going on in the army. Now in the party, looks like, and I think Chaligonza was trying to say that, look, it looks like it is Museveni who has sent Rwabogo to come against me, and that's why I should now say no. Even Mbabazi should also stand.
Okay. Chris, when you look at it, how do you discount the close association, Kisa raises it, Ona raises it, of one candidate who's causing, it's the name Rwabogo, you correctly pointed it out, the name Rwabogo, but his associations and his relationship with the party chairman who's also president obviously shoves him into the limelight. If he was any other contender, there wouldn't be as much controversy as there is now. What do you say?
Charles, there is a great danger for this country. And as I was laughing when Mzee Karusoke was speaking from a philosophical point of view, that most times people chastising Odrek today, chastising who today, if you ask them what they believe in, they believe in an inclusive society. They believe in free participation. At the same time, in their belief in free participation, they don't want other people to participate, including people, the civil society, the intelligentsia. We now make arguments for convenience. We are not making arguments on factual grounds and work for that idea. Because now, like I told you, nothing stops Odrek from standing, except perhaps the political tactics and strategy. That should be a matter to be handled by the NRM. Is it strategic for them in the environment where there are threats? Has Odrek done a threat analysis to the party chairman that when he stands, his standing will not amount much discount of his votes? That is what Odrek should be asked in those quarters. For me, but for us to say, because he's an in-law to Museveni, and therefore he should think, it is not the duty of Rwabogo to remove Museveni from power. Unless you're asking him to stand against his in-law, which will not do.
But the point is this.
But for me, he fell short of answering that if anybody else wants to challenge the chairman, who is young like me, they are free to do it.
No, but he did not say that.
Let me make this thought, Doctor, to be Kiza.
Yeah.
So we cannot, because the other day we saw Chen Lukiamuzi's daughter take over the father's seat. And that did not cause Hulaba.
Yeah.
I wonder why it should cause hulabaloo simply because Odrek has decided to stand, not for any for the fathers. In fact, for Lukiamus, you put a caretaker. And he went to work and reclaimed.
Yeah.
So this is a tradition. If it is good for Lukiamuzi, let's not stop Odrek to seek to lead simply because he's an in-law to Museveni.
Okay. But can I just that's one moment.
There are problems of this candidature on their own merits. That what does this standing mean? Let's separate the two. If it means that it is discounting Museveni's vote, then they resolve it. But for Matayo Chaligonza, even the way he speaks, for 26 years I was a brigadier. Let them not forget that even Matayo Chaligonza, he's been a brigadier in Uganda, and his record is there. For me and the people who come from Teso, we also know who brigadier is as a soldier. So you don't come out and say, because your interest has been affected, therefore, ordinarily you are not a good man. No, it doesn't work like that.
Let's bring in Mzee Kajabago. What happened to ideology in the NRM?
You see, now, this is exactly what I've been trying to say. Are you a quantity or a quality? You have a human or human structure. Are you a quantity or a quality? Quality means mentally built up. How? And how are you spiritually built up? What do you say? Do you say a word which is shelter for thought? How do you think? Because word is shelter for thought. What is your mental potential? What is the quality of your mental potential? It is not Chaligonza, it is not Wagogo, it is not Museveni, it is not Mbabazi, it is not Besige, Amanya Mshegu, anything. No. It is what you are as a quality.
What do you represent?
What are you? Not who you are. What are you saying? Is it a quality or a mere demagogy? Shouting, talking nonsense, wishing for yourself. What do you want society to have? That's where we can judge somebody. It is not that Chaligonza should have been promoted from a major general to brigadier. What are you as a brigadier different from what you were as a major general? Are you a military quantity or a military quality? What do you want society to have? Have you written it down? Can you show it to us? The same with Amama Mbabazi. He says, Museveni has made mistakes. What are they? He does not show them. If he shows them, how do you want them to be corrected? He doesn't. Now, if you have been with Museveni for a long time, making the same mistakes in the party which you did not point out, when you say Museveni should go, why don't you go with him? And a new biological human or human quality emerges in your place. So, Mbabazi is a mere quantity, not a quality.
Chaligonza is?
And he's mentally staggering, and mentally under arrest, spiritually dehydrated.
And Chaligonza?
Chaligonza is mentally staggering.
And Museveni?
Museveni is the better of them. You know why I say Museveni is better?
Yes.
Of all candidates standing for presidency, Museveni is within the context of socioeconomic formation. Socioeconomic formation is made up of economic base and superstructure. Museveni is not talking much about superstructure. What is the state? What is law? How am I going to use them to run a society? No. But Museveni is concentrating on how he can improve upon infrastructure, roads, rail lines, you see, electricity.
But Mr. Kajabago, if you take us that road, he's had 30 years to do those, and he's had 30 years of talking about the same things.
But in that case, therefore, if he made mistakes, he's at least trying to rectify them.
Is he?
But no,
how much?
Excuse me. Unlike Mbabazi, who say he made mistakes, Mbabazi can't show them, and he's not showing us how to rectify them. If Museveni made mistakes, he's at least trying to show us how he's trying to solve.
Okay, let's go back into the movement a little.
In that case, I would say that Museveni is a better candidate. At least of all what he should have talked about, the nature of superstructure, at least he's talking about infrastructure.
Okay.
Whereby any other candidate,
just before I come to you.
Any other candidate is not talking about anything to be improved upon. What they want is position, and they don't tell us.
You obviously haven't read their manifestos. You need to read their manifestos before you criticize them. Now, a quick question to you.
You mean you know their manifestos?
We are giving them the opportunity to present their manifestos, and then we can discuss based on what they're saying.
But Charles, a quick question for answer. You talk about ideology. Because for me, I must express my interest. I have sympathy for the young generation. That's where I belong. I don't have gray hair like yours, although you're an NRM ideologue. But when you're the ideologues who said you liberated this country, and there are young people who have followed you, they have been in leadership for as long as 15, 20 years as well. And they are coming on stage, they get responsibility, and you begin to belittle them. What does it give about you who claim to be elders? You don't subject yourself to the same systems you have created. And you're belittling a secretariat, you're belittling everything. You think the Bahatis who have come are nobodies. So, should the country stop with you
Charles,
who came from the bush?
Charles, for me, sort of answering Chris, just to say a little. I think for me, the youth are also being overrated. Let's not forget that when the NRM came to power, the bulk of the leadership was underfunded. So, there's going to be no miracle that young people will take over and things will dramatically change. But I think it's inevitable that those who are going to take over are going to be younger people. But also, this family connection to the president, again, I don't know why people get so surprised. To me, the NRM has inherently been an informal organization. The family linkages to the president of a lot of the leaders in the NRA, NRM are an open secret. And I don't think this is about N. I suspect post-2016 there are going to be more informally related people to the president coming out in the NRM at the fore of the leadership. It won't be surprising.
Okay.
And I'm one of those who believes in pedigree. If people like Kartoke believe the president has a lot in him, and if there are people who are related to him,
well, it's possible has passed his own biologically. Do you have a problem, Mr. Kartoke, with a son-in-law to the president,
or a son for that matter,
or a son, now vying for a position in the NRM leadership, which would put him on the same table with his father-in-law to discuss party issues?
You see, the problem with some of you is that you're mentally aberrated. What matters is what, for example, somebody has been arguing about whether Kenneth Rugaba can become president.
Yes.
It is not a matter of Kenneth Rugaba being a son of the president. It is whether he's a philosopher president or whether he can really become a head of state as a philosopher. Not that he's a son of Museveni or not son of Museveni. No, it is what he is as an academic quality. Because if he's son of president and he's capable of being president, and we say no, since his father is president, this is nepotism or tribalism or sectarianism, and yet the fellow is capable of being a president, then where the country is losing quality of a person.
In fact, to support your point, Zay, this world has had no shortage of leaders who have had children, but it's rare that they actually become leaders like their parents. So those who succeed, not because their parents have decided, because they have their
gentlemen, I'm afraid we need to take a break.
Excuse me.
Can we take a break?
Excuse me. That means, therefore, that if there is any father like Museveni who has a son qualitatively capable to become a president, as when Museveni has a son as Kenneth Rugaba to become president, let that father's son also come out as Kenneth Rugaba who wants to be president.
Okay.
It should be qualitative competition.
But then, as you go for the break,
let's take the break. Let's take the break.
It should be qualitative competition.
I hear you, Mr. Kartoke. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll pick this discussion up. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate. We're discussing new NRM young turks and historicals versus historicals. Is it a realignment within the national resistance movement? And we have with us, let me just go back, to Muzeika Jawago Karusoke. Is there an ideological deficit within the NRM?
An ideological deficit. You see, what we need to understand is that we should define an economic system, a specific economic system, which is supposed to be pro-people, in order to talk about welfare, patriotism, ethics, an ability to avoid corruption. These things are ethical, you see. And you can't describe ethics in any society outside a certain particular economic system. Economic systems determine ethics, determine the nature of states and law. What economic system do we have? And which economic system is NRM trying to promote to give way for a correct ethics to guide the people? Because when you try to emphasize the need for a middle class, to emphasize the need for private enterprise, where there is complete maximized egoism, you are spiritually going incorrect.
Okay.
And you will never have cadres to do what you want in terms of what society should be, because capitalism is egoistic. Anyway, if we have to have anything to do with private enterprise, it should be allowed to fill in loopholes within a welfare state, but a welfare state where...
Mr. Kasoka, you're getting us lost without discussing or answering the questions we're putting to you. And that's not fair to either us or our viewers out there. The question is NRM suffering an ideological deficit? Given the nature of the contestation for political positions within that party and the way you have governed the country?
Yes, because that's why I'm saying, you see, I don't want to be a demagogue. That's why I'm saying, unless you talk about a specific economic system to teach ethics or from which ethics can spring, then if NRM does not come out with that specifically to say what sort of economic system should we use not to allow people to develop ambitions for private enterprise to loot public services.
Okay.
You see, then NRM is having an ideological deficit unless they come specifically towards what sort of economic system should we have, which can give rise to a particular type of ethics, not to allow ambitions to loot public services like roads. Can you see why they are looting roads? They want private enterprise. Kazin has done that. All of them are struggling to loot from public service in order to create personal property in the means of production.
Thank you.
To promote capitalism. That's why you are failing. And the party should really correct itself on that. I am very frank. And I think I should be thanked for that.
Your party will thank you, and the people will thank you.
And here we thank you.
We thank you. Ona, let's come back to, as we move towards the end of this discussion, the realignment within the movement. Do you think Tango Doy and his team have held strong so far? The nominations are coming on. Some of these names have to be vetted by the Central Executive Committee, especially those for very senior positions within the party. What do you envisage will happen in the Central Executive Committee of the NRM when they sit to decide between Hakim Lukenge and Moses Chigongo? Matai Charigonza, Audrey Krawogo. To vet those names that are supposed to contest. They have now been, all of them have passed the first test of picking nomination forms and getting registered, but they have to be vetted by the Central Executive Committee.
Look, I think President Museveni has already had his fair share of rebellion within the NRM in the form of Amama Mbabazi, and he will try his best to make sure that before that SEC meets, all those players, he has spoken to them and sorted out each of them, and it will be a formality. I don't envisage any SEC meeting where the president will be at the mercy of anybody. So I don't expect any drama. I think the president's eyes are clearly focused on making sure Mbabazi and perhaps lately Besigye did not surprise him in any way. So we didn't want to tolerate some of those small things. But of course, it's a crisis. It's a crisis of desperation. A lot of people, for them, these positions are life and death, and that's how sad it is. But at the end of the day, we have seen these things before. I think whoever the president thinks should be the one in those vice chairman positions will be the ones to carry the day.
Chris, do you foresee net drama within the Central Executive Committee when it is to decide?
It's bound to be there because, like the old man raises, the interests are various. And so the interests are not national. The interests are personal. We need to move from the personal to the national. The two should feed each other. The national should feed the personal should feed the national. That linkage is lacking in our body politic.
You're giving Karsoke a smile.
Yes, because unless you address those are the political foundations. Actually, Africa's problem is lack of proper political foundation. We are copying, we are just picking them, we don't even know, and we use them badly, whatever we pick from other nations. Because it is not the desire by the younger Turks for power, that's an issue. The focus should be the rules of the game. The rules of the game should allow whoever wants to contest to be able to contest, win fairly, fail fairly. Let me bring it closer, Charles. There is nothing absolutely wrong with David Beckham's son, going to Manchester Academy wanting to play in Man U. Because Man U has a setup. The child should be taken. But it's not a guarantee that because it's Man U Academy, he will be in a Manchester team. There are already parameters for which to play in Man U. We are not discussing the parameters of our politics. We are now going to names. Oh, why are you coming for me? None of them is saying, this is how we are going to deliver an election that will be less of acrimony. They are all saying, why are you coming for me?
Chris, why should we forget the context and the history to this? February 2014, in Changwanzi, the NRM caucus in Parliament set the ball by saying, we are ring-fencing the position of party chairman and therefore party flag bearer for the holder of that office. Now, everyone who supported along the way, you talked about Chalgonza and his berating Mbabazi for jumping the queue, for literally jumping the queue in the Central Executive Committee. It is built on that background. Should we forget it now that it is Chalgonza and it has moved away?
There are two things you are mixing. President Museveni's constant stay at the head of NRM and the need to build systems that allow political participation with less acrimony. And I told you it's not the duty of Odrek Wabogo to ask his father-in-law get out of power. It is the duty of those who feel he is not delivering to the expectations to demand that he gets out of power. For me, I'm discussing the playground.
Whose duty is it?
This is one, a civil status duty. This is a political party duty. This is a citizen duty. Now, for us now, we are going to say, because it happened in Chankwanzi, therefore, let's ignore building the rules of the game. What kind of election do we have? Who are the participants? How do we ensure that if Muhoozi is standing against Onapito, Muhoozi has no interference with the ballot? This is important because there's a higher chance Onapito can defeat Muhoozi. You get the point? I'm just saying that Onapito can beat Muhoozi. It has never been a guarantee, like Onapito says, that every son of a president will become a president.
I hear you.
There is always what they call the intrinsic value. If Muhoozi's intrinsic value is acceptable to the majority and there are good rules, he will still become a president.
Okay, Moses.
But even if he forces himself with the good rules, he can fail. This is what I'm discussing. But Charles, the more ethical problem he's bringing out, sometimes we elite, we are taken up by the desire for change. But I can tell you, increasingly our start has gone. The Labour position the other day was caricatured in a very horrible manner. Why? By the same political class. Telling everything nonsense about Wafulugudu. He just kept quiet. As we speak, you know what's going on about the Speaker of Parliament. Everyone is saying everything about her without any mindset that, is this true? Is it false? What is the reason? So that feeds into what we call the political environment. If you want to challenge Charles, you blackmail Charles. you make him look a useless man. That to me is what we will be focusing on. That allow Charles play politics, allow Karusoke play politics. Now, for me, if I was to take a position, I cannot ring fence any position. My son, my daughters are free to go and work in Monitor. For as long as one, they have gone to a mass comm school, they have excelled, the editorial department there has got its rules and regulations, and they meet that.
Okay.
So let's focus on those rules so that we don't, we have an inclusive political environment.
Moses.
Yes, Charles.
The creation of the rules, Chris puts it and says, it is the responsibility of every citizen. That's what I pick out of it.
Yeah.
So setting the rules within the national resistance movement is the responsibility of the party chairman, of the members of the Central Executive Committee,
the Politburo,
all the way up to the LC1. It is the responsibility of members of that party.
Right.
My question is, to what extent has Rwaboko contributed to making the rules, or talking about the rules of the game? To what extent has Chalugonza made the rules, or contributed to making the rules? To what extent has President Yoweri Museveni and the other people? If you're discussing them, because the struggle by Rwaboko, the struggle by Chalugonza is all based on, I can be there, I can make the party better, without telling us that the rules work.
You see, both Chalugonza and Rwaboko are caught up in contradiction and in an inconsistency. Chalugonza, as I said earlier on, not too long ago, was among those baying for Mbabazi's blood, and not defending the principle that there should be free and fair competition. That Mbabazi should compete against Museveni just like any other person would compete against him. That is now that things have turned up against him, he has come up to say, oh, let Mbabazi also stand. Rwaboko is caught up in a contradiction of, oh, it's time for the old guard to go. But he's saying almost nothing about the fact that the oldest guard at the topmost is still there and has already been ring-fenced. And you know, you talked about Chankwazi last year having set the ball rolling. If Chankwazi said the topmost position is beyond competition, Chalugonza is saying, why not mine as well? Okay.
Why not the second topmost position?
Why not the second topmost position? Now here is the problem. The problem is that the NRM...
While proceed, Kiza,
yes.
While it's politically correct for you to say the president's position has been ring-fenced,
the chairman,
it is not factually correct because nobody went to Chadondo to pick forms for presidential candidate and was stopped.
Well, Chris,
so politically you're right,
that is an academic,
you're not.
That is an academic argument. You see, we know that all sorts of roadblocks were put on the way to stop Museveni's most credible challenger, Mbabazi, from competing against him, including engaging in mass mobilization against him, spending billions of monies to try and stop an Mbabazi candidate. So, I mean, that is there for us to see. We cannot hide away from it. But Charles,
did he pay the money for nomination and was stopped?
You see, that's a small legal procedure. The truth of the matter is that a lot has been done since early last year to stop him. And we know that. I mean, you are a journalist. You've been saying these things. Charles, here is the issue. There is a problem of the NRM being run as a democratic organization. I think that's where the problem is. Rwaboko should have the right to stand like another Ugandan, as I said, but the point is, isn't his being a son-in-law to the president going to give him undue and unfair, competition against Chalugonza? I think that's what Chalugonza is crying against, that look, the president is sending his son-in-law to stand against me in a manner that's going to be unfree and unfair. So, see, there is no way you can run away from the fact that if you are a son-in-law or a son to a chairman or to a president, somehow the process is going to favor you, especially in our setting here in Uganda. If it happens elsewhere, where systems are better built and competition is better.
There is no way David Beckham's son will have a higher advantage over Mangusa's son in a Manuel Academy.
But that is Manu. We are talking about Uganda.
Why don't you
we are talking about Uganda.
Why don't we create that setting here?
It's not there.
I actually think Chris is wrong on that, because David Beckham and his association with Manchester United gives him an advantage, gives his son an advantage over a
But a coach is selecting a team. He selects the one who will make a team win.
Okay. Karsoke is itching to come in.
The ideologue.
I think...
Well, there is no ideology.
When somebody says that because somebody is a relative to somebody, therefore he should not come to politics, I think that is an academic ignorance. And you're mental under arrest. Because I think anybody has the right, thinking that, or imagining, or knowing that somebody is a relative so-and-so, is just something different from what somebody is. And we can't fail to be relatives to each other simply because we are going to share some kind of academic undertakings in society.
But Mr. Karsoke, you are the one who raised the question of ethics. Ethics. Can we discuss relation and ignore the advantages that relationships give?
You see, when you are academically inferior, you see, or when you are suffering from mental inferiority complex, you see, then you can't judge correctly. Inferiority complex is a disease. So because Museveni is president, therefore his relatives should not be allowed in public service. Why?
That's not the argument. The argument that Chris was raising...
Wago is being talked about, yes, because he's a son of
yes.
in the
the argument that Chris raises... The argument that Chris raises...
You should discuss Wago as a quality, politically. What is
exactly.
He, not who he is. Don't confuse who he is.
Exactly.
With what he is.
Yes. Mr. Karsoke, the question...
What and who are different.
Let me put the question to honor. The question is, if the rules are not clear, then relationships become important. Or if the rules are not being followed, then relationships become important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both Chris and Kisa have a point that in the absence of rules, it's a big issue. But again, no,
which rules?
Rules of the game.
What is assumed to be fairness, but at the same time, then everyone else is having a same playing field. Even people who are not the president's relatives are having the same playing field. So it's a general problem which you cannot blame Rabogo for. And to me, in a way, there are also advantages of having these people who are closer to the president.
Your problem are
just hold on.
Your problem is academic standards of judging phenomena.
Yeah. So even if you have a vice chairman who is a son-in-law to the chairman,
how will you relate with the chairman on that?
Then you are also helping solve the problem of politics based on fear. I mean, you are not going to have people being able to express themselves.
You're not going to have politics based on affinity.
Not affinity, but there will be people who can speak for what they believe in. But at the same time, it means that the rest of us are being challenged. Those who are challenging the president, they also owe to themselves to groom their in-laws, to groom their children, to participate in politics. Politics is a game of people trying to take advantage. And you can't deny anyone.
And you see, Honor is very right because, hold on, let me say, Honor is right. We are focusing on Museveni and Odrek. But I can assure you, there are MPs whose wives are the campaign managers. There are candidates whose families are the architects. But because this Ruabogo has come, it is convenient to say he has done the wrong thing.
No, but Chris, what is wrong is wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
But now, Charles, this is discussing like workplace relationships. The others will say it's not good for people to fall in love in the same place of work. But there is no consensus on as to whether if I fall in love with a woman who work in the same place, we can't manage work. If I had love for Afulokutu's daughter, nothing would have stopped me from marrying her in spite of my working there. If I loved Onyango Boy's daughter in Monitor, that was my love relationship. Now, scholars have failed to agree scholars have failed to agree whether actually people who work in the same place when they get married, their performance declines. You cannot have a general rule.
Where do you put the discussion about conflict of interest?
Exactly.
If you are a supervisor in a workplace you don't own, which is not a family business, to your wife,
how do you supervise
How do you supervise her?
How do you supervise
what is the code of ethics in that organization? What are the rules that organization?
I think the question is, Chris, that if you have a fight at home, how do you prevent it from spilling over into work? If you have a disagreement at the workplace, how do you stop it from spilling over?
Now, that's the assumption. But every organization has got standards. It is not true under any research that when Charles has called wife at home and they go to work, the quarrel will go there. It is still an assumption. It's an hypothesis
and the question
that you can test.
And the question is, what are the standards that guide the national resistance movement?
Exactly.
Our time is out, gentlemen.
What are the rules? What are the rules?
Gentlemen, our time is out. We need to get out of here. Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much. There is a young man I met the other day who's a very good fan of this show called Bob Basaza. So I thought I should. When you meet young people, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and they say, we can't go sleep until I've watched the fourth estate, you feel some kind of you feel good. And so Bob Basaza and a lot of his brothers, I think, whom I met the other day. Thank you for being fans of the show, and I thought I should mention this. Thank you very much, Kajabago Karusoke, for making time the show.
Yes,
well done. Thank you very much. Peter Kamara, thank you very much. Chris, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight, and we will continue watching closely the contests both within the National Resistance Movement, the other political parties. I think the number of presidential aspirants who have picked nomination forms has hit 20 with the Electoral Commission. A lot of jokers.
Quality or quantity?
We'll discuss that on another occasion. Have a good night.
Kabajagu will also pick.